Let's examine the crosstab query. Now, if you've ever used Excel, the crosstab query in Access is very similar to a pivot table. It allows you to take a vast amount of data and summarize it into a small, meaningful table. Now, the steps to creating a crosstab in Access are twofold, really. The first is to create a query that looks at multiple tables and brings through the mass data that you would like to create your crosstab on. And then the second step is to actually create the crosstab. So the first step is to create a new query in Design. And we'll use our customers table, our sales table, our yearly income, and our countries. Now, what we're interested in is the country name, the yearly income label, and the actual sales value. Now, as we've seen previously, even though we're not using any actual fields from the customers table, we need this table because it effectively joins the other three tables together. If we just organize these so that the arrows are not crisscrossing, the countries table links to the customers table, the sales table links to the customers table, the yearly income table links to the customers table, but this table does not link directly with that one. It needs the customers table. So we know and we're happy that we need that customers table in place. If I view the result, I now see all the sales that we've had, and I see which country it went to and which income bracket the person who bought it belonged to. What I'm now after is summarizing this data into a small, meaningful table with the country names uniquely down the left perhaps, and the columns across the top being each income bracket, and where the yearly income meets a country, I get the summary of the sales. Let's see if we can get that to work. We save this query, QRY, country, income, bracket, sales. Okay, and then close. So that's step one. The first step is to do the joining together of my tables that I need to generate the data that will be the base for the crosstab. Step two is the creation of the crosstab itself. So we go to Create as per normal. Now we can create a crosstab query on our own in Design View, but it is much faster and easier in this case to use the Query Wizard. So we choose the Query Wizard, we choose the crosstab Query Wizard. Okay. I get a security notice for the wizard that will now start. It's fine. Which table or query contains the fields you want for the crosstab query? Well, it's actually a query, so I choose queries. From my list of queries, I then choose the correct one, which is the country income bracket sales. Next. Which of my fields do you want as the row headings? So which of these fields is going to have all of its unique values listed as a separate row? Well, I'm going to put the YI label, so the income bracket label, down the left. So you can see we're going to have each of the income brackets listed. Next. Which fields do you want as the column headings? Well, that's the country name. So each of the columns will then represent a unique country from our data. Next. And which number do you want calculated for each column and row intersection? So where the country meets a particular label, what do you want to do? Well, I'd like to sum the sales value. So it chooses the sales value, but only because it's the last remaining field not to be used. And it makes a choice of average, again, only because of defaults, and the default here is it's alphabetical. I want sum. Do you want to summarize each row? Yes, include row sums will give me a total at the end of each row for each yearly income. We'll leave the tick there and see what we get. Next. What do you want to name your query? And you'll see all it does is it takes my query name and puts underscore crosstab at the end. That's a good enough naming convention for me. View the query. Finish. Query is then generated, and you can see that all those rows are now being summarized into a number of columns and rows. Each row here is the 5 income brackets, and each column is the 6 unique countries that have sales. And then we have an extra column here, total of sales value, let's widen that, which is for each income label. because we placed a little tick in the wizard that says, sum them up for me, please. So it's a clever little summary based on our source data. Now you can look at the design of a crosstab and you'll see that things differ slightly in here. We have a crosstab extra row option here where we define what we're using as the row headings, and we're using the YI label, the column heading, which is the country name, the value, which is where these two meet. That's the sales value, and we want to sum the sales value where those two meet. And then we've got an extra row heading here where we're totaling. Now if you widen that, you'll see it's just the sales value being summed up, but as a row heading. So you could build this yourself in design by choosing the crosstab query type and setting the right options. But until you've made a few and got used to which is the right headings, the row headings, the column headings, and the values, it was and is much quicker to create your initial query that summarizes the data and gives you the list of the fields and content that you want, and then run the wizard. That then gives you your crosstab, which, just like any of the other queries, every time you run it, it will regenerate itself. So if there have been any changes in these values based on the countries or the income labels, then the totals will actually change. And that's a crosstab query in Microsoft Access.